Thank you all for coming today, many a great distance, to celebrate and honor the extraordinary achievements of Andreu Mas-Colell. I am Tom Holmes, Chair of the Economics Department of the University of Minnesota. Andreu is a 1972 graduate of our PhD program. The Outstanding Achievement Award is the highest honor that the University of Minnesota bestows on its own graduates, and conferral of this award will take place later in the ceremony. And as will be explained, not only is Andreu extraordinary because of his research, but he's also extraordinary in his entrepreneurship in building academic institutions, particularly here in Barcelona. So it's really special that we're able to celebrate this here. And I just want to say up front how grateful we are to UPF and BSC for partnering with us, right, to make this special event possible. And Tim will say more about that later. Let me introduce our first speaker, our provost, Rachel Croson. Now, I'm really grateful that she came here for two reasons. I mean, first of all, she is the chief academic officer of the entire system, and so when she's bestowing it, that's giving it some special oomph, right? But really, the most special reason is that one of the three things that we focused on in the award is Andreu's contribution to graduate education. And Professor Croson was a Harvard PhD student who took her first year PhD micro from Andreu, right? So she can directly speak to that contribution. Now, just say a little bit about Provost Croson. I believe her advisor was Eric Maskin, is that right? And she started her academic career at Wharton, and then more recently she had a succession of academic administrative appointments. Most recently, she was the Dean of the College of Social Science at Michigan State, and then came to be our provost in March 2020. That's a funny time with COVID, but she managed it very well. So please give a warm welcome to Provost Rachel Croson.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you to everyone for being here. I'm deeply honored to be able to represent the University of Minnesota in recognizing our alum, Andreu Mas-Colell, and his lifetime of contributions to economics, to the academy at large, and to the world. In our grant of this prestigious award, we focused on three distinct contributions. The first are his amazing discoveries in mathematical economics that are fundamental to our field. Both John Roberts and Tim Cohey wrote supporting letters for the award describing this achievement. Happily, they are both here with us on stage, so I don't have to say anything about differential topology. The second is his fundamental contribution to building academic institutions. Josep Oliu, president of Bank Sabadell and Minnesota PhD, focused on that in his letter. And on our stage, we have three leaders of academic institutions that Andreu impacted. Laia de Nadal, rector of Universitat Pompeu Fabra, Teresa Garcia Milà, general director of the Barcelona School of Economics, and Minnesota PhD Luis Torner, director of the Institute of Photonic Sciences, representing the Barcelona Institute of Science and Technology. But the third accomplishment is his fundamental contribution to PhD education in economics, and I want to say a few words about that. When I began my PhD program at Harvard in 1990, Andreu was one of 4 faculty members who team taught graduate micro. We didn't even have a textbook, just photocopied notes. Andreu, of course, covered partial and general equilibria, not an easy topic. But he was so charming and so caring and so supportive that none of us noticed how difficult the material was. And he clearly loved the material. He would get so excited while he was lecturing that he would trip over the metal trash can in the room and make a very loud noise. Although I sometimes think that was only to wake the students who were sleeping in the back of the room. He talked about how when he woke up in the morning, sometimes he could see in 4 dimensions, and that this is when he did his proofs. But maybe this was just so he didn't have to teach classes at 8 a.m. And when we were studying for our qualifying exams, he would accidentally stop by our study groups in Litauer Lounge to see if we were stuck on a problem, or he would come to tea and answer questions. Later in my PhD program, I was asked to serve as a teaching assistant for the graduate micro course, and I witnessed his same generosity to that next generation of students. Andreu has changed our discipline through the hundreds of PhD students he has taught and mentored, and as one of them, I am eternally grateful. And his legacy is multiplied as those students go on to teach and mentor and advise others. I know Tim Kehoe will have more to say about that later. And remember those handwritten notes for the first year PhD class? Those notes eventually became the landmark textbook, Mas-Colell, Winston, and Green. Of course, this is the leading first-year graduate textbook used all over the world, including Minnesota. Those of you who were in PhD programs in the mid-1990s like me remember this textbook, and those from earlier generations may even use it as a reference. As we celebrate Andreu today, I want to highlight the importance of the PhD students that we have been able to attract from Spain over the years to the very cold Minnesota. Andreu was one of the first recipients of the Andreas Fellowship, which helped attract students from Spain. They were known to their peers as Los Minnesotos, many of whom are here today. While the Andreas Fellowship eventually ran out, we are still attracting wonderful students from Spain. We have 2 of them newly minted PhDs who are in our audience today, and we hope that you will continue to send us your wonderful students. I conclude in my official capacity as the Provost and Chief Academic Officer of the University of Minnesota System. I couldn't be more proud to count Andreu as an alum. Thank you, Andreu, and I'm delighted to turn the podium back over to Tom.
Barcelona is known for its beauty, its vibrancy. It's a world-class city. But now in economics, Barcelona has become world-class. The research done here, its vibrancy, importing students, exporting ideas. Of course, a lot of credit goes to the Barcelona School of Economics, and Andrea founded it. I now introduce General Director of the Barcelona School of Economics. She is Teresa Garcia-Milà. She earned her PhD at the University of Minnesota under the supervision of Chris Sims. She started her academic career at Stony Brook before moving to UAB, Autonomous University of Barcelona, and then in 1990 to the newly created Universitat Pompeu Fabra. In 2006, she became an affiliated professor of the newly created institution, now called the Barcelona School of Economics, and she has been the director there since 2012. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Teresa Garcia-Milà.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening, dear friends. It is a great honor for me to participate in this very special event representing the Barcelona School of Economics. My first words are of gratitude to the University of Minnesota for distinguishing Andreu Mas-Colell with the Outstanding Achievement Award. I think there is no one better than Andreu to represent the Minnesotos. As Provost Crossan already mentioned, this term is widely used for the University of Minnesota economic PhDs from Spain, a group that is very well represented in this room today. All of us are in one way or another indebted to Andreu for opening our path to a life changer, to our adventure in Minnesota. But we Minnesotans are just one group of so many who have benefited directly or indirectly from Andreu's generosity, creativity, audacity, openness of mind, genius ideas, and support and guidance along our path, many times on the edge, to reach what seemed to be impossible. Andreu has an immense capacity to see ways forward that no one even imagines. As a starting point, all is possible. It is just a matter of careful and thoughtful analysis of the situation, having a clear goal, and thinking creatively about how to get there. What for others are stoppers, for Andreu are challenges to overcome. This applies to his path-breaking research and to his leadership in graduate education, but it is his dimension as institutional builder that I would like to highlight. While he was still living in the United States, he contributed to the launching of Universitat Pompeu Fabra, but his return to Barcelona from Harvard in 1995 was a turning point in his career for the benefit of research in Europe, and greatly so for Catalonia and Barcelona. The university and research policies designed and implemented by Andreu during his service in the Catalan government have been game changers for the Catalan research ecosystem. These policies have prevailed through government changes and have served as a template for other policymakers. Barcelona School of Economics is an imaginative idea that arrived at the right moment when research in economics in the Barcelona area was already of high quality, but quite dispersed. BSE unites the efforts of 4 leading institutions, and the outcome is immensely greater than the sum of the individual parts. I would call that the multiplier effect of Andreu. To finish, let me share an experience that is probably familiar to many of you. You find sometimes yourself struggling with a situation, you can't find a solution, you don't see where the next step is, and you mention it to Andreu. He listens carefully, asks questions, makes some observations, asks more questions, and then pauses. For a few hours, or maybe for a few days. Then one morning, you find an email from Andreu, usually sent late at night, with ideas that will most likely untangle the knot and guide you to a solution. That is just one of the ways Andreu has helped to many of us, from his PhD students to his co-authors, from his fellow policymakers to the directors of the institutions he helped to create. Thank you, Andreu, and congratulations.
Back in 1995, when I first heard Andreu Mas-Colell was moving from Harvard to Pompeu Fabra, I remember thinking, wait, the brain drain, that's supposed to flow to the United States, not the other way. But over time, and including seeing what's happening here, I've grown to appreciate that this is not a zero-sum game, that we all benefit from the flows going both ways. I now introduce you to the rector of Pompeu Fabra, the institution that when it was only 5 years old was able to lure Andrea away from Harvard. She is Leah de Nadal, who has been the rector of UPF since March 2023. She's a professor of the Department of Medicine and Life Sciences since 2017. She obtained her PhD in veterinary medicine from UAB, Autonomous University of Barcelona, specializing in molecular biology and biochemistry. Before becoming rector, she served as vice rector of knowledge transfer at UPF. Please give a warm welcome to Rector Leah de Nadal.
So, good afternoon, dear Andreu, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends. It's a profound honor to stand before you today to celebrate the remarkable achievements of Professor Andreu Mas-Colell. First and foremost, I would like to extend our deepest gratitude to the University of Minnesota. Welcome again to the UPF. And given the depth and the scope of his contributions, of Andreu's contributions, summarizing Professor Mas-Colell's leadership in research, education, and institution building is indeed challenging. So as a rector of UPF, I would like to attempt to highlight his profound impact on our university, on UPF. As many of you know, Andreu was one of the founding visionaries of Pompeu Fabra University and played a fundamental role in shaping our funding strategy. These foundational principles endure today, propelling us to prominence as a prestigious international academic institution. First, we were conceived as a research-focused university. Today, while many claim to be research-intensive here in Catalonia and in Spain, few can substantiate this claim with concrete achievements, such as, for instance, being the first Spanish university to attract funding by number of researchers. Also, Andreu Mas-Colell and our founding rector, Professor Enric Argullol, had the nerve to place UPF at the heart of Barcelona, despite many opinions, as I understood. They understood the importance of this location for a public university committed to civic engagement, urban renewal, and fostering connections with business and culture. Furthermore, UPF was born as a medium-sized, flexible, and specialized university focused on excellence in specific fields rather than attempting to cover all domains of knowledge. And the results obtained during these 34 years show that focusing and concentrating efforts is the right way to go here at the UPF. Finally, they championed a foundational strategy centered on attracting and retaining the best talent, including top students, management teams, and teaching and research staff, of course. Despite our current budgetary and regulations, also constraints, we work hard, the actual team, to maintain these strategic views. It is also important to emphasize that Andreu was instrumental in developing our Faculty of Economics and Business, establishing it as a leading institution for economic education and research in Europe. Over the years, this department has evolved into a beacon of academic excellence, attracting top-tier students and scholars from around the globe. And today it is recognized as one of the top departments in Europe. And finally, alongside his academic and research endeavors, Professor Mas-Colell has held several pivotal leadership roles in Catalonia, in Europe, or in the States that have been shaped educational and research policies. As it has been already said, the landscape of science, research, and higher education in Catalonia will be vastly different without Andreu's dedication and visionary leadership. And let me finish to conclude with a fond memory. In 1990, Andreu delivered the inaugural lecture of UPF's first academic year, and on that day, he imparted an inspiring lesson titled Advice to a Starting Student, which remains, I think, a must-read for students and faculty alike. The speech concludes with a motto that remains relevant 34 years later: that is al cap al món, als peus al born. Roughly translated as our states set on the world with our roots in the born. For me, this phrase perfectly encapsulates Andreu's life journey, both academically and professionally. But most importantly, it also perfectly encapsulates our university journey and also our inspirations. As the rector of the UPF, it's a motto that I always strive to keep on mind every day. There is little more to add except for acknowledging Andreu's love and dedication to our institution once more. Gràcies, Andreu. La teva influència i la teva visió han donat forma a la nostra universitat fins a convertir-la en la que avui és dia, i jo t'agraeixo com a rectora de la Pompeu la feina que has fet en aquesta universitat. Moltíssimes gràcies.
In economics research, it's great if an idea is so good and so general that it not only is a game changer in one subfield economics, but then you can take it over to have a huge impact on another subfield, or perhaps even out of economics and other fields more broad. Andrea has great ideas of how to set up institutions for economics research. Why not take those ideas and apply them to sciences more generally? Our next speaker can tell us about this project. He is Luis Torner, who is director of ICFO, the Catalan Institute of Photonics, one of the 8 research centers that form BIST. You see the logo on our programs, the Barcelona Institute of Science and Technology. He's professor at UPC, Polytechnic University of Catalonia, where he obtained his PhD specializing in nonlinear optics. Luis Torner was the founder and first director of ICFO in 2002. Please give a warm welcome to Professor and Director Luis Torner.
Thank you, Tom. It's really my honor to be here and to speak on behalf of many colleagues who are not economists. Many of them are physicists and chemists and biologists, and we are all super proud of being here at this event. So, first of all, I would like to thank the University of Minnesota for organizing this event here in Barcelona and for inviting us. We are not part of the club somehow, right? And so thank you for inviting us to be here. And so this is about Andreu, of course, but I submit that without the path that took Andreu to Minnesota, perhaps, and then brought him back to Barcelona a few years later, the history of science in this part of the world would have been very different. Okay? And so your university across Spain is known especially to the economists, right? But I want to recall that the only person so far to have received a Nobel Prize in physics twice, Dr. John Bardeen, was also Minnesota. He was a physicist, but he was Minnesota. Okay? So my role today in here is not to praise Dr. Andreu Mas-Colell's scientific achievements. That can be done by other people better. Those are also significant and deep and very important. My role in here is basically praising Andreu's role in building institutions, including BIST and ICFO. And so, in this task, I submit that Andreu's contributions are unique and in Catalonia have had no parallel in history. I know that he doesn't like this, but it's a fact, right? So, Dr. Mas-Colell likes to say that his legacy is a continuum and that many people contributed to what he did. That's possibly true, and he knows best, right? But the fact is, what he did here in Catalonia is a disruptive change, is a leap. It's something that brought us to a new dimension. And so, without his vision and his drive, this would not have happened. So I spoke to Andreu first in the year 2000, so almost 25 years ago. And during these 25 years, I've seen him apply again and again, and again and again, and again and again, a few fundamental principles, including, especially, one that says that governance values the internal structure of an entity are absolutely crucial to keep focus on the mission and to practice excellence. Thanks to the application of these principles that Andreu, as Teresa said, applied again and again, often at night, very often at night, for the first time in here, in Catalonia, for the first time in history, I again submit, Andreu, that we are the first generation of scientists who enjoy research institutions that have the aspiration, Andreu says the ambition, the structure and the capacities to make world-class research on a continuous basis in a sustained way. In the past, perhaps that happened to a few individuals, but not to entities, full entities. That's Andreu's creation. So without Andreu's drive, leadership, and vision, history would have been different for science in this part of the world, Andreu. Some of the entities that he helped create, like ICRIA, the GSE, of course, CRG, ISIC, ICFO, and many others that later were created using Andreu's spirit, would not have been possible. So those entities stand there proud and happy for everybody to see. And actually now the world see these entities as really entities that aim at making world-class contributions. So on behalf of all my colleagues and the whole community, I thank really warmly Andreu Mas-Colell for this generosity, courage. Wasn't easy, I was there. It wasn't easy to convince people to do what you wanted to do. Commitment, leadership, and service. That his actions took place because at one point he decided to somehow quit science and devote his life to public service just adds to our admiration and generosity and gratitude for him. He could have been a super famous economist. He's a super famous economist, but even more famous. He devoted his life to public service, in particular in Catalonia. Thank you, Andreu. And so I would like to finish with a quote by another remarkable Nobel Prize winner, somehow linked to Minnesota, somehow I think, namely Robert A. Zimmerman, otherwise known as Bob Dylan. And the quote goes, a man, in this case man is generic, a man is a success if he gets up in the morning and gets to bed at night. And in between, he does what he wants to do. Andreu belongs to that club for sure. Thank you, Andreu.
Bona tarda y bienvenidos a todos. See, Teresa said evening. That's an American influence. I mean, it's still too early. It's afternoon. Ha estat un honor y un plaer para mí nominar a Andreu Mas-Colell per l'Outstanding Achievement Award de la University of Minnesota. El màxim guardó que la universitat atorga als seus antics alumnes. Avui som aquí per celebrar l'Andreu i els seus èxits. Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a todos. Ha sido un honor y un placer para mí nominar a Andreu Mas-Colell para el Premio Outstanding Achievement Award de la Universidad de Minnesota, el máximo galardón que la universidad otorga a sus antiguos alumnos. Estamos aquí hoy para celebrar a Andreu y sus logros. Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. It's my honor, pleasure, to nominate Andreu Mas-Colell for the University of Minnesota's Outstanding Achievement Award, the highest award the university grants its alumni. We're here today to celebrate Andreu and his achievements. I share this stage with people who have helped in the nomination process and in arranging this celebration. Tom Holmes, chair of the Minnesota Department of Economics, wrote a supporting letter, and over the last couple months, I think he spent more time and energy planning this event than anybody else, certainly than me. Rachel Croson, the provost from Minnesota, wrote a supporting letter and traveled here to present the award. Teresa Garcia Millar, well, she's here in two capacities, because she's the general director of the Barcelona School of Economics, but she's also here you have to thank yourself for their support, right, as a Minnesota alumna. Luis Tournay is the director of the Institute of Photonic Sciences, and he represents the Barcelona Institute of Science and Technology. And Laia de Nadal is rectora here at the Pompeu Fabra, and I want to thank them and the institutions that they represent for helping organize this event. I also want to thank several people who are not up on this stage, but deserve thanks. Kara Kerstetter, the head administrator of our economics department, and Teresa's team in the BSE, Jody Neufeld, and especially Eva Pujol of the staff. I especially want to thank Eva. I saw her here coming in. Wow, she did extraordinary things, not just in organizing, but in solving problems, sometimes at night or early in the morning. Muchas gracias, Eva, por hacer toda esta faena. To support my nomination, I solicited letters from Josep Oliu, longtime head of the Banc de Sabadell, and John Roberts, the John H. Scully Professor Emeritus of Economics, Strategic Management, and International Business at Stanford University. Josep followed Andreu and Tone Bosk. I think they were the first two Andreas fellows, and I know there's quite a few Andreas fellows in this room who did PhDs at Minnesota. And he finished his PhD in 1978. He was a professor for some years at the Universidad de Oviedo. And I know when I was in Madrid at the Banc de Sabadell's office there, arranging some of this event with him in March, we both talked about our love for Asturias, where we both were going shortly thereafter. Now, he and Andreu published a translation into Spanish of Gerard Debreu's classic book on general equilibrium theory, Theory of Value. He's also a member of the BSE Board of Trustees. John Roberts is a distinguished academic economist who was a classmate and close friend of Andreu in Minnesota, and his research had focused on design, governance, management of organizations, and we've already seen Andreu's own interests in that kind of thing showing up here. John has been a member of the Scientific Council of the BSE. Josep and John have unique personal perspectives on Andreu and his outstanding achievements. I'm fortunate, so do I. As a second-year graduate student in economics at Yale University, my thesis advisor, Herbert Scarf, pointed me to a set of mathematical tools to think about when a general equilibrium model had a unique equilibrium rather than multiple equilibrium. In particular, something that's called a fixed point index theorem in differential topology. While he was visiting Stanford in 1977-78, Herb met Andreu at a Berkeley-Stanford seminar, and he told Andreu about the work that I had done so far, and then he communicated with me and got me to send, come on, this is before word processors, and I'm afraid my handwriting wasn't that great, handwritten notes, page after page of maybe tedious mathematics. Maybe I wasn't that concise. And he got me to come and spend the summer of 1978, 46 years ago, doesn't seem that long ago, at Stanford to work with him and where I'd be able to visit Andreu at Berkeley. One day at the beginning of my stay at Stanford, I caught the Stanford-Berkeley shuttle bus early in the morning, came back late in the afternoon. I'd spent the entire day at Berkeley working and walking around with Andreu. What I was doing was indeed very closely related to what Andreu was working, using differential topology to redo general equilibrium theory. Andreu's work at that time was being published in many journal articles, and later in his masterpiece book, Theory of General Economic Equilibrium, a Differential Approach. Now, you know, if I had been lucky, a generous, prominent researcher, coming across a grad student from a different university working on a closely related topic, would have told me he was happy to write a co-authored paper or two with me. Instead, Andreu told me he liked my approach. He would stop working on that, and it helped me. And he did. In fact, he spent a huge amount of time in his office and over the phone. I was thinking about that while other people were talking about Andreu's influence in Spain, even when he was in the United States. And as someone who was fortunate enough to spend a lot of time with him, I was trying to imagine what his phone bills must have been like. But he spent a lot of time going over my rough mathematics and making sure I understood fundamental ideas of transversality and differential topology that I've been trying to teach myself. He helped me so much that Herb Scarf and I arranged for him to be my official co-advisor at Yale University, even though he was at Berkeley. Working with Herb and Andreu allowed me to finish most of my thesis that summer after my third year at Yale, and I took a position first as a lecturer, then assistant professor at Wesleyan University in 1978. Now, during the next academic year, 79-80, you know, Andreu was the hot commodity in economics at the time, and both Harvard and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology offered him, and then, as now, considered probably the two best economics departments in the world. And they offered Andreu positions as a full professor. Now, he managed to fend them off, at least that year. But when he was out there giving talks, he talked a lot about my work. They both made me offers as assistant professor, and I went to MIT. He then, after another year, came to Harvard, and he and I at least tried, it was our agreement, that we'd have lunch together once a week. We were often busy, but we tried. For 2 years until I went on leave to University of Cambridge in 1983. But that didn't stop my interaction with him. He worked behind the scenes, again, probably on long phone calls, and arranged for my friend and co-author from Yale, Jaime Serapuche, to first visit the Autónoma in 1984. People ask me how long I've been coming to Barcelona. It'll be 40 years this December. And we presented research we've been doing to study the Mexican economy with tax reform and so forth. We met 3 young professors at the Autónoma, Antonio Manresa, who's here today, Clemente Polo, and Ferran Sancho, who's just stepped down as the rector of the Autónoma. And we put together a project. Andreu was active getting the support for that to study the impact of Spain entering what was called the European Community at the time in 1986. Later on, when I got an offer from the University of Minnesota, I talked to him, and I decided to take that over outstanding other offers, and I've been at Minnesota ever since. Now, I could tell stories a lot more. And I will at some point. I just got to stop soon. About Andreu's brilliance, coupled with his extraordinary generosity, loyalty, ethical standards. I owe much of my success in economics to him, and I know others who feel the same. Look, I came here the first time, 1984, as a result of an invitation that Andreu pushed. I've been here at least part of every single year since then, including the pandemic. When the pandemic hit, I was giving a class up in the Autónoma. And, yeah. Like John Roberts, I've been honored to be on the Scientific Council of the BSE since its inception. Thank you very much. I have provided my introduction to the next 2 speakers, but I'll mention them as they come up. First, we're going to have Dr. Josep Oliu.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Andreu, Provost, Crosson, Rectora, dear friends and fellows, for me it is a great honor to speak here today at this event of the Pompeu Fabra to recognize Andreu as an outstanding graduate of my university, the University of Minnesota. When I first was asked to do that, to endorse this initiative taken by a group of professors led by Tim Kehoe, for this, I could not have been more thrilled. You know, I first met Andreu. As a matter of fact, today I was, thinking, and what drove me to this banking career that I have gone through? And I arrived to the conclusion that was that it started by translating the Brest theory of value with Andreu. So that's, how you can end up where you can. Thank you, Andreu. I chose to go to Minnesota, to other alternatives I had, especially over Oxford, after talking at length with Andreu at that time. We were very young. He was finishing his graduate at the University of Minnesota. And he was telling me about the prominent teachers, professors that were there at the faculty at the time. And I want to mention Walter Heller, my thesis advisor, Leo Hurwitz, and Ann Kruger. But also, he explained to me that there were not only those, great economists, but also some younger guys, smart professors that seemed to be promising, such as, he mentioned Chris Sims and Tom Sargent, and you know who they were afterwards, So, according to Andreu, I decided to go to where promising and the knowledge was, and not to go to big names of the universities that I had the choice, and then I went to Minnesota. I'm very grateful for that. I know it is not my role here to explain to you what the great academic achievements that Andreu has done, but also I would like to stress of something that other people that have talked before me have said, and it is the extraordinary ways in which Andreu has contributed to our Catalan and Spanish society through the different initiatives that he has undertaken, and for which we, as citizens of this country, we are extremely thankful. When he was at Berkeley and then Harvard, and before and after, Andreu has helped always many students of economics to attend American universities in which he had some influence. A contingent of excellent economists who received first-class education at that time. Many later returned to this country, to Spain, where they promoted new standards of education in the Spanish public universities, or went into other areas, as political economy or business, like myself, where they contributed to the modernization and the democratization of the Spanish economy and society. At that time, it was very difficult to develop high-standard schools and high-standard School of Economics, despite having an entire generation of highly educated Spanish scholars who were established. And it was essentially because the rigid recruiting and compensation schemes in public service institutions it nigh on impossible to attract teaching and research talent. Andreu had a mission and had a view, and he left his comfortable and prestigious Louis Beckham chair at Harvard to become a pioneer in developing high-class education and research in Spain. Pompeu Fabra was his first achievement, the rectora is here. He started that hand by hand with the first rector, then Professor Enrique Argullol. Since then, Pompeu Fabra has become one of the leading universities in this country with an outstanding economics department. Later, Andreu joined Catalonia Autonomous Government in 1999 as head of research and university education. He won the trust of the then president of Catalonia region at the time, Mr. Jordi Pujol. From his position, he developed ICREA, Catalan Institution for Advanced Studies and Research. This was a public fund, and is a public fund, and mechanism for resource allocation, which allowed the remuneration of talented professors to be supplemented so as to make it more competitive to an international level. This was crucial for the development in Barcelona and in Catalonia of a group of leading people and leading institutions in different areas of academia and knowledge, each of them led by outstanding scientists. One of them is represented here today, Luis Torner, and he represents not only that, but also the whole group of institutions that have been developing in Barcelona thanks to his leadership, such as the Synchrotron, the Barcelona Supercomputing, IRB, the Biomedical Research Center, Catalan Institute for Chemical Research, Center of Genomic Regulation, etc., all aggruppated in BIST. ICREA is a protected public system based on equal opportunities, on meritocracy, and accountability, and which views to public funds used in the program as investment and not just as an expense. As an economist, Andreu could not leave our city, Barcelona, without a graduate school of economics that could compete for the top positions in the European academic world. He was always aiming at the top, Andreu. In 2006, was successful in launching the Barcelona Graduate School of Economics, with the Graduate School of today, the Barcelona School of Economics, that's led by Teresa. To achieve this goal, it was necessary for 3 public universities in the Barcelona area to join forces to create a unique brand pivoting mainly on the Pompeu Fabra University as well as in the Autonomous University of Barcelona. That's not an easy task. It's not an easy task, especially in a world that is driven by egos. But Andreu is not shy and doesn't shy away from tasks that seem almost impossible. He's a little bit stubborn, as many of you know, but it is that quality, this quality that he has, together with his inexhaustible energy and his moral authority that seem to magically combine, allowing him to make seemingly impossible things and seemingly impossible dreams into reality. Andreu was a founder and the first chairman of the Board of Patrons in which I am honored to belong. He established the outstanding scientific board with the late Hugo Sonnenschein as his long-standing chairman, and a governance patronage where he involved academics, politicians, and other leading figures of the business society in Barcelona. The Barcelona School of Economics is now on the podium of the first-class economics departments in the postgraduate education in Europe. He was also Secretary General. At one time he went to Europe. I don't know if he enjoyed it very much or not, but he went to Europe. And he was also Secretary General of the European Research Council from July 2009 to August 2010, and President of the Executive Council of the European Economic Association in 2006. He's now engaged as chairman in the development of BEAST, that Lluís Torné is here for, following the model of the Barcelona School of Economics, by regrouping efforts to be internationally competitive. And by providing easy access to European research funds, BEAST was launched in 2015, and it combines these several Catalan research centers of excellence that I mentioned. This country owes a lot and a great deal of gratitude to Andreu Mas-Colell. It is not easy task to change bureaucratic public institutions, and it would not have been possible without Andreu's academic prestige, dedication, effort, and his creative impulse. Andreu has always had two passions, science and politics. My feeling is that his passion for politics was for one purpose, and this purpose was to develop his main passion, which is science again. He has received many awards, and I'm not going to go through them. I think that it's special for him, and as it is for me, that he received this award, because the award that one receives from alma mater is something very special, because it's the way that profession and friends and the institution where you grew up sees your outstanding reach. On this special day in which he received this recognition by the university, I want to express my gratitude for his immense contribution to education and to research to this country, and also for his unwavering efforts to speak up and offer a rational, creative voice in the search for solutions in the various public matters. I would like to congratulate Andreu today, and also, of course, the University of Minnesota for their continuous efforts to support the education on so many distinguished economists can now look at Andreu as their inspiring star. Thank you.
And now, Professor John Roberts from Stanford University.
Well, I and my wife Jane are delighted that Andreu has won this award and that he couldn't go to Minnesota for it, because that gave us an excuse to come here. As been mentioned, I'm on the scientific advisory board of the Barcelona School of Economics, and the trips that sponsors for us to come, and for me to meet with an absolutely incredible group of people that came together through Andreu and Hugo Sonnenschein, Andreu's great friend. And to enjoy Barcelona is a wonder. I go back further with Andreu than any I believe, of the other people on the stage here. I arrived at Minnesota in 1966, having been persuaded by Jim Ross, who was a recently appointed assistant professor at Stanford and a Minnesota PhD, a very distinguished one over the years, that I should go to Minnesota rather than Stanford. Which made no sense because I had not yet taken calculus when I graduated. Which meant my first year at Minnesota was remedial studies, and that meant when Andreu arrived in '68, I was in the same classes, not the same class, the same classes. Andreu and I were in a number of courses together. Perhaps certainly the most interesting, maybe the most important, was one that Hugo Sonnenschein taught. And Hugo would come in every week and present a serious open research problem. And he'd talk about it and talk about how he was thinking about it, and we'd go away and come back and talk about what we had to think about it. And in later years, it circulated among younger economists that the real question in the course was whether Andreu would solve the open problem before the end of the class session. I don't know that that happened more than a few times, but it shows the regard that the economics community holds for Andreu's brilliance. In fact, he's arguably the foremost contributor to foundational economic theory to have entered the profession in the last 50 years. It's just a remarkable record. He's done fundamental work that's been mentioned in using calculus to do general equilibrium theory, which he wasn't alone in that, as been mentioned, but he was a major contributor there. He's done important work in social choice theory. He's done really interesting game theory, which is the area that I'm closest to of our work that we've done in parallel. Beyond that, he's been the editor of Econometrica, the top economics journal, at least among theorists, and generally regarded as one of the top 5 economics journals at least in the English language. And he's published this fantastic textbook. My next door neighbor, David Krebs, keeps trying to do him one better, and he's on volume 3. But Andreu's book remains the book from which young people learn economic theory. He's produced some remarkable doctoral students, Matthias de Waterpont in Brussels, Eddie Deckel in the States. Tim's already laid his claim. And it's striking that though Andreu came to Minnesota without a particularly strong math background, we were talking last night that we had taken the same real analysis and functional analysis courses as we went through. He had a joint appointment in the Berkeley math department as well as the Berkeley econ department. Berkeley math is not to be sneezed at. Beyond that, well, you know what he's done to build institutions here. I don't have to tell this audience what Andreu has done for economics in Catalonia. There hasn't been so much mention that I was able to discern of the incredible efforts he's given into serving the public in his roles in the cabinet, and the costs that he's borne as a result of that. And there's one last thing that I'm really happy about. I was a student of Sonnenschein's, and this year the Econometric Society set up the Hugo Sonnenschein Award as the for outstanding contributions to the economics profession. And Andreu was named the first winner. So he's on a roll. I think it's time we let him respond.
Andrea, get on too.
I just go.
No.
Where do I go? So we have two gifts in recognition of Andreu's very prestigious career. You've all heard about it, and of course, many of you knew about it in advance. The first is the formal Outstanding Achievement Award, and I'm told I need to read everything in this award. University of Minnesota Outstanding Achievement Award to Andreu Mas-Colell, distinguished graduate of the University of Minnesota. Leading researcher worldwide of his generation in mathematical economics, applying mathematical tools to address classic problems in economic theory, particularly in general equilibrium theory and in cooperative game theory. Leader in graduate education in economics and co-author of Microeconomic Theory, the most widely used textbook in graduate education in economics in the world. Brilliant and energetic builder of institutions of research and higher education in economics, starting with University of Pompeu Fabra and continuing with the creation of the Barcelona School of Economics. The Regents of the University of Minnesota, as an expression of high esteem and in recognition of noted professional attainment, confer upon Andreu Mas-Colell this Outstanding Achievement Award on June 26, 2024. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Oh, thanks.
That's very serious.
Oh, yes.
I take this and then you can speak.
Okay. Dear friends, I am I'm overwhelmed. Thanks to all of you. Look, I have been given 20-25 minutes. I plunge into it. I'm very touched. The gesture materialized today. It is one more link in a long chain that entangles me with much satisfaction on my part with the University of Minnesota. Allow me a brief personal account of the development of this relationship. This will be the content of my minutes, so I will not address everything that came after Minnesota that has been mentioned, but let me just say that everything was a collective effort, and it is true that I did not resist the opportunity to
enter politics, and that Pepe Lee was right, that politics has always been for me an instrument to promote research and science. But we were lots of people working, and the effort has been collective. Anyhow, I go back to my 4 years to Minnesota. So these words now will be a bonding exercise with Minnesota. In the fall of '66, having concluded my undergraduate studies in Barcelona, I moved to Madrid. In the morning, I would attend military duties as a sailor. Yes, as a sailor. In the afternoon, I became a member of the graduate seminar of Professors Ángel Rojo and Manuel Varela at the Universitat Central. My intention was to enroll in a PhD program in some British university in the fall of '68. Which one? The logical candidate was the University of Essex, where Rojo had a good entry to David Leitler and was succeeding in impressing students. So, how did Essex was derailed to Minnesota? First, there was an omen, and this implies a confession. Back in the '60s of last century, I lived in a culture where reading was imperative and books rare. So much so that there was an understanding that if you could get them for free by whichever means, you should go ahead. I was not used to the practice, but I have to confess, the offense is long prescribed, that I put myself to the test, gathered the courage necessary, and one day in the Madrid book fair, I did it. A stressful experience never again repeated. Well, lo and behold, the victim was a book by Walter Heller, the famous Minnesota economist who had been president of Kennedy's Council of Economic Advisors, and from there brought Keynes to the mainstream of American economic policy making. It was shortly after this premonition that Professor Varela and then Rojo got access to a line of scholarships which had been promoted by Heller, and that was designed by him as a training scheme for the economists that Spain, no doubt, would need in a democratic future. The scholarships were set up in the economics department of the University of Minnesota by Dwayne Andreas, who also had a Spanish interest. He was a major exporter of soybeans to Spain. Studying in the US had not crossed my mind. It was very unusual in Spain at the time. The choice used to be the UK if you wanted to train in, let me say, analytical economics in the Anglo-Saxon tradition, of Paris if you wanted to land closer to political economy, meaning some variety of Marxism. But I soon warmed. You get the double entendre here. Huh? I soon warmed to the option of Minnesota. First, certainly because it was a life option, and then because I recognized some names in the faculty, Heller, Henderson, and especially Hurwitz. In a book of the International Economic Association edited by Malembo and Baccarat, I had encountered a chapter by him in planning that I did not understand at the time, but that fascinated me. Although from the Varela-Rojo-Heller connection, I was destined to be a macroeconomist, the microeconomist in me was emerging. So Minnesota was to be. That said, I did not know anything about Minnesota, although I had already clarified that Minneapolis was not Indianapolis and that car races was not the thing. I was told that the Mississippi ran through the campus, and being familiar from my teen years with the adventures of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, I imagined a rather warm weather. I was quickly disabused of the notion, and I would soon learn that the winter in Minnesota cannot be described in words a Mediterranean type like myself will comprehend. Besides my Spanish teacher that probably thought the Minnesota option was more risky than Essex, but worth trying, a first expression of gratitude on my part has to go, therefore, to Walter Heller and to Dwayne Andreas. The second, to the economics department, here very well represented. They admitted me on the recommendation of Professors Rojo and Varela. That was not an obvious move. I had two strikes against. One was that my undergraduate grades were mediocre. My personal career strategy in my undergraduate year was to make the effort necessary to pass in the required number of years, 5, so as to be able then to move abroad to learn modern economics. It did not occur to me that that may require good grades. I had some, but the average was not great. The fact is that I devoted much time in those years to political activism. The Minnesota department detected the problem, and they wrote to Rojo and Varela asking if I was the real thing. They vouched for me, and I was admitted. Thanks, Economics Department. I was the beneficiary of the careful work of a well-functioning admissions committee. My second strike against is that I did not speak English. In fact, I barely read it. I had become an expert in finding translations into languages I could read: Spanish, French, Keynes' General Theory in French, or Italian, Schumpeter's History of Economic Analysis in Italian. Somehow, I was admitted without the TOEFL. When I went to my visa to the consulate, I was asked by a gentleman how I would sustain myself. I said, I have a scholarship. The gentleman fixed his eyes on me and said, a scholarship, like sheep. They did not say it, but I could see that the people in the department office had similar thoughts in mind when the day I show up in the flesh at Minneapolis. Let me add, however, that in that first year, my non-English came out handy. It served me to follow a splendid course on the theory of international trade taught by Takashi Negishi, who was visiting that year. I might have been the only one that understood his English. A last anecdote. I will become more serious. Being admitted and with financial support was not enough. I still had to get out of Spain and into the USA. I needed a passport. No, I did not have a passport, and when I petitioned for one, I was denied. It was a common practice if one had a police record. I had to resort to Rojo again. He wrote in my behalf, and I was told after a while to show up in the Madrid Central Police Headquarters, where I would get the passport. I was told to pick it up in an office by the name of Office of Arabic and Special Affairs. Evidently, I was in the special category. Fortunately, going to study to the US was not considered as dangerous as going to Paris. Getting to Minnesota was quite a novelty for me. I had a very limited experience with traveling abroad. The shock, let me say, was triple: weather, social, and intellectual. I start with the weather. The winter is a defining characteristic of the Minnesota identity in a manner that, for example, the equally extreme summer is not. I have never known any Minnesotan proudly exhibiting his or her ability to endure a Minnesota summer. Minnesotans believe that the winter is character forming, and they are probably right. So much so that they have invented, perhaps just adopted, metrics, the wind chill factor, for example, that appears designed to quantify the temperature with the most negative numbers possible. I wonder how deep down Minnesotans are taking the fact that climate changes may make Minnesota warmer, with mixed feelings, I bet. The weather has consequences for the functioning of society. When you get out of your apartment and your mustache instantly transforms itself into a piece of ice, you realize that you are facing an existential threat, and that, for example, public services cannot fail, and they do not. They did not then, and I cannot imagine that they do now. Later in life, I lived in the suburbs of Boston. I would react with condescending smiles every time that a minor snowstorm collapsed the city. I had lived in Minnesota and knew what real snow was. Boston's bus for beginners. That said, one is very adaptable in youth and did not take long in Minneapolis to adjust and, in fact, to enjoy the new temperature environment. Of course, there were some mishaps along the way. At the time, with my fellow, Andrea's fellow, Antoni Bosch, who is here, we decided to home manufacture a Spanish-style ham, and we ended up handing a pig's leg in a basement with the windows open, so that, as required, fresh air could accelerate the curing process. Well, it was November. That night, the temperature plummeted, and the water pipes burst. In true Minnesota style, the landlady understood, taught us some facts of life on living in Minnesota, and took it in stride. Adapting to Minnesota's social life was easy. That's for the weather. Now I go to social. Social life was easy, in good part because the international office of the university was very well organized and took good care of the foreign students. For example, they sent me to a nice family in a suburb of St. Paul for my first Thanksgiving. It was a tradition I do not know about and which gave rise to an instant of cultural misunderstanding on my part when on leaving I was given a doggy bag with excellent leftovers of the dinner. I was shocked. Did they think that I was so poor that couldn't buy my own food? Finding myself in the midst of the very international community at the University of Minnesota was also a novelty for me, although I should say that not being the only Andreas Fellow arriving was a blessing. The friendship with Antoni Bosch and Joaquim Silvestre, with whom I shared living quarters during 3 years, was the anchor of my social life. Together we made acquaintances and friends with people of all sorts. Between classes and homeworks, we hung out at the joints of the West Bank, already in post-Bob Dylan's days. I especially remember the Triangle and the Mixers, and there were many, many Saturday night parties. I cannot assert if partying came as part of an American naturalization, or if it was a rite of passage that comes at a certain age. But I always had the impression that there was something specifically Minnesotan with the phenomenon, and the winter had to do with it. Life began perforce indoors, socialization was planned and took place in parties, sometimes with food, always with buzz. Lifelong friendships were made. It was quite intense and sometimes productive. My main technical idea for my PhD thesis came as a flash in one of those. We also participated in the anti-war demonstrations to the Capitol in St. Paul. Those were the years of the Vietnam War. Demonstrating was not new to me, but I was more trained in the hit and run variety characteristic of the opposition to a dictatorship than to the massive, legal, diverse, even festive type characteristic of a democracy. I could say that with this I polished my education in advanced applied demonstration science. Not all of this activity was core. There were also specialized chapters. For example, I participated in anti-Shah demonstrations. There was a significant group of Iranian students that, as Spaniards were anti-Franco, were anti-Shah. We were kindred spirit, although a then good Iranian friend, or Persian as he wished to be known, We had it easy because he told me, after Franco, there will be democracy. Well, after the Shah, they will need to deal with Islam. How right he was. I also discovered that the fellow graduate students coming from all over the world constituted a great support system. Reciprocal altruism and learning together thrive. Asparting graduate school is also a forge for lifelong friendships. Thanks, Anthony Bosch, John Roberts, and Joaquim Silvestre for being here today. Let me move now to more intellectual matters. I was extremely fortunate in landing in Minnesota. Landing is the right term because even if I had not identified any faculty, I would have come to Minnesota. My choice set for PhD students outside of Spain was a singleton. But it so happened that my interest and my ability exactly matched the strength of Minnesota at the time. The Madrid seminar was centered in macro, and the Varela Rojo Heller Road pointed me in that direction, but it was not to be. I have sometimes allowed myself the frivolous remark that I took the turn away from macro because Ann Kruger taught the macro sequence at 8 o'clock in the morning, winter included. For me, a night person, this was a stretch, and I never took the sequence. I regret it, but the omission is also indicative of the fact that I soon discovered the richness of what Minnesota had to offer in microeconomics and mathematical economics, the fields towards which I naturally gravitated. And yes, the courses were taught at decent hours. So microeconomics in the form of general equilibrium theory and mathematical economics is what caught my mind. Let me give a few details that show the importance of teachers and how central they are in our intellectual development. I will concentrate in three: Hurwitz, Sonnenschein, and Richter. But before, a couple of remarks. The first is to put on record a defining characteristic of the Minnesota style. John has already mentioned it. Mathematics was a serious business. More or less formally, if you had to become a theorist, you had to be a trained mathematician by spending time and taking courses in the math department. And so I did my real analysis with Rodian textbooks, including the exercises where I was proud of the accomplishment of solving them all, hundreds of them. The second is to point out that the curricular coverage of the department was broad. I have already mentioned Ann Kruger in macroeconomics and Negishi in international trades, which I should pair with John Chingman, also in trade theory and econometrics. And then there were the recent arrivals, assistant professors. In my first or second year, I took a topics course with Asaf Razin, just out of Chicago. And this led to my first published papers, co-authors with him, and one of them also with Anthony Bosch, my friend and later colleague at Pompeu Fabra. Actually, the paper with Razin is perhaps my only paper which title would not sound imposing or be jargon-laden to my neighbors on migration and development. In this dimension, I am afraid that in my scholarly work, it has been from then on all the way down. With respect to Hurwitz, I was lucky and unlucky. Unlucky because he moved to Harvard in my second year. He came back 2 years later. His loyalty to the institution was a big success for Minnesota. But I missed him in my 2 central years of graduate studies. Lucky because he was there in my first year, and he taught a marvelous course in general equilibrium theory, which I took in parallel to the standard micro sequence. He also taught an advanced course, which I also took. Hurwitz was developing in these years the idea of mechanism design and writing seminal papers on the matter. Minnesota students, myself included, were exposed to the term incentive compatibility coined by Hurwitz much before the world took notice. The course was notable because, remember, I am referring to Hurwitz as mathematical economics because the course was totally free of mathematics. The teaching tool of Hurwitz were chalks of several colors and the ability to develop ideas through edgeboard boxes. He was a master of the trade. The course had a big impact on me. To this day, I love to play with edgeboard boxes. Of course, as Hurwitz taught us, they have to be properly drawn with the arrows of the axis shown and indicated. And not coincidentally, they are present in a well-known textbook. Next comes Hugo Sonnenschein, who would end up being a major influence and a major intellectual and academic partner in my life. Again, with him, I was lucky and unlucky. Unlucky because he was on leave on my first year and because he moved at the end of my second. Lucky because I had him 1 year and I could take his topic course in the springs. At that time, Hugo had already obtained the first results for what in time would become the Sonnenschein-Mantel-Debré theorem. I was also very interested in social choice theory. It was a time where the latter was grappling towards a linkage with game theory. That course led to a joint paper on impossibility theorems with acyclic social choice and to a lifetime of friendship and collaboration. The making of the paper had a peculiarity. That spring was the spring of the invasion of Cambodia. There was a call, largely successful, for a student strike. Given my background and solid training in these matters, I, of course, went into strike. The implication was missing some classes with the fascinating and brilliant professor, and the danger that he took I was too frivolous to be taken seriously. Hence, I redoubled the effort of the course, full of exercises and conjecture, and at the end of the day, a paper that got some impact will come about. So perhaps I owe my published beginnings in the line that more directly connects with what I did in the rest of my scholarly life to Nixon's invasion of Cambodia. Finally, the third person that was decisive for me was Ken Richter. I had interacted with him as a sort of assistant in a book on demand theory that was edited by Chidman Hurwitz Sonnenschein himself. I had been impressed with his approach to theory, which was to attack complicated problems by distinguishing between essential and inessential features, building then abstract models that retaining only the essential features and hope that by doing so, the problem becomes not harder but easier. That is, succeeding in displacing the complications and messiness to an essential feature that can be put aside. With this approach, he had a spectacular success with the set theoretic approach to reveal preference theory. At any rate, this abstraction strategy is one I have engaged repeatedly in my own research trajectory and that I learned from him. Ken Richter became my advisor. He helped me a lot in my thesis on preference theory and was instrumental in recommending me for a postdoc at Berkeley, which was provided by Gerard Debré and by another Minnesota alumni, Dan McFadden, and off to Berkeley in the fall of '72 in a car trip I shared with a just arrived new Andreas fellow, Pep Oliu. And we still remember the places we slept in, Laramie, Salt Lake, and Reno. My intellectual, I am almost finished. My intellectual links with Minnesota have persisted through the years. It has been so with my teachers and with the always strong community of theorists, which includes some from whom I was part of their PhD committee, such as Beth Allen, Tim Kehoe, or Larry Jones. Also, following an initial invitation of Ellen McGrathan, it pleases me to have the opportunity to follow the splendid development of the Heller Hurwitz Institute. In the more personal side, my wife was an assistant professor at the math department, and my older son is an alumni of Macalester. Interestingly, his head of department at Macalester was the same that mine at the University of Minnesota 30 years earlier, the most effective Jim Simler. Minnesota, let me put it on record, also has been very present after my return to Barcelona. In the first place, because thanks to the Andreas Fellowship, Spain is full of Minnesota alumni. to the point that there is a common name for us, the Minnesotas, which, by the way, are the nucleus of the biennial Thanksgiving gathering. Non-Minnesotan graduates are invited. In the second place, because Minnesota academic features have percolated to our academic organization. For example, teaching at UPF follows the quarter system rather than the almost universal semester system typical of Spain and much of Europe, and this is not a coincidence. And in the third place, because in our context, it's important to have model of public universities, Minnesota and UPF are public, that strives for and reach excellence. It is time to conclude, and I would like to do so expressing my deeply felt thanks to the University of Minnesota for the honor conferred upon me. I should say it is especially pleasing receiving it from the hands of the Executive Vice President and Provost of the University, Professor Rachel Crossan, member of the Economics Department, and as she has mentioned, we cross paths at Harvard, I as a teacher, and her as a student. Thanks, Rachel, for taking the trouble of being here today. Thanks also to the promoters of the recognition. Their names are not completely known to me, but I am certain the list will include the rest of the people that have spoken today. Thomas Holmes, Tim Kehoe, Teresa Garcia-Milá, Pepe Liu, John Roberts, and Rachel Crossan. And thanks also to the Minnesotas for a day, Lluís Torné and Laia de Nadal, and to all of you here. Thank you.